This week we are back in Venice. Today's episode is all about the big guns, St Marks Square, the incredible St Marks Basilica and the Doge's Palace, as well as some real surprises. These buildings are absolutely incredible with amazing history, artwork and some fascinating stories. We tell you all about the secret police and their secret mailboxes all over Venice, as well as the secret doors and tunnels in the palace. So lots of secret squirrel business that went on, including how the most famous prisoner held in the palace, Casanova, escaped in the middle of the night. Listen to the end to hear the dreadful thing that happened to 4 bronze horses that sit atop the basilica in the main square. Oh, and also something else that involves horses that you just won't believe, and I think you'll make you think that's pretty disgusting. Here's a hint. Think blonde hair and ammonia. I'll leave it to your imagination. So enjoy episode 53, all about the fascinating and sometimes gross history of Venice.
Cheers and welcome to the Beach Travel Wine Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Lyle, and this is the travel podcast for beach-loving, wine-drinking couples over 50.
So if that sounds like you, grab yourself a drink, sit back, relax and listen as we go travelling the world, one wine at a time.
Cheers.
Oh, welcome back to Venice.
Ciao, baby.
Ciao, baby. You've been saying that to me for days. Like even before we came, every time I wake up, the first thing you'd say is ciao, baby.
Well, I was practicing.
You were practicing, yes. It was, and very sweet. So we're back in Venice and we're now going to hit the big guns. Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah. As we said in our previous podcast, we walked to St Marks Square in the middle of the heart of Venice, San Marco. That's isn't it? So when you walk into St Marks Square, you're quite what's the word? Maybe not overwhelmed, but the size of it.
It's 180 metres long or 590 feet.
Wow.
You didn't realise I knew this.
You've done your research.
And 70 metres wide, which is 230 feet. Look, it is what it is. It's it's big, each of the, as you walk in from the direction we came, you just look at this at the basilica. It's magnificent, and there's the huge campanile, which is the bell tower, and then along the sides you've got.
It's all the buildings, and they're all symmetrical. Like they're all the same height. They've got just the window after window after window.
It's like an arch, isn't it? Yeah.
And they just all look the same.
And then you've got all the restaurants lined up, and you've got that's where the oldest restaurant in Italy is.
Yes.
And then a couple of the restaurants have actually got bandstands.
Yes.
And so
that's right. So you can hear the
yeah. So they basically play the whole time you're there.
Yes.
And it's more or less obviously very traditional Italian music. Like it is very, very romantic. And then
at one end there's some museums now, which used to be a
church.
That's
right. Yeah, that Carrera,
Museo de Carrera.
Yep.
And then you look back, as Lau was saying, and the bell tower isn't in the middle. It's
on the right-hand side.
It's the right-hand side, but it's actually a replica because the Venetians arrived in St Marks Square one day and it imploded on itself. And so they rebuilt it. Apparently it's a very good replica, and you can now go to the top and you don't have to climb stairs. There's a lift inside.
And you can look at the rooftops.
Yes, from up there. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And obviously the canals and things, the water you'd see from up there as well. And so you're looking, as you said, at the St Marks Basilica, which everyone's heard of. And it's one of the most famous landmarks in Venice.
And the other thing I just remembered then is the 3 tallest flagpoles I've ever seen in my entire life.
They were right at the front of St Marks Basilica. The thing that strikes you about the basilica, and we're going to talk about a bit more about that in a little while because we're going to go to the Doge Palace first. But when you look at the basilica, it's covered in murals made out of mosaics, and there's 3 main ones on the outside that you can see, but 2 of them in particular, they weren't all done at the same time. They're all spread over centuries, and you can actually see the progression of people's knowledge of how to do, art. One of them is just like 2-dimensional, which I really like that one. But the one next to it shows depth, but by putting in sort of shadows and things.
So back in the day, their technology.
Yeah, that's it. So that was pretty impressive.
And then you see the domes, from the exterior, and it almost looks, I suppose, Muslim.
Yep, but we'll tell them about that whole dome thing, won't we?
We will. So Leah's just almost grabbed me on the knee saying,
I'm glaring.
Don't bloody say that
man,
now.
You jump ahead.
I get excited.
You do get excited. But what I wanted to say was, because I'd never been to Venice, and all the sort of documentaries and pictures I've seen, a lot of them, they had these 2 big poles, pillars at the opening of the square onto the water.
Yeah, so you're looking directly at the basilica, and then you turn right. And when you turn right, you've actually got
another square.
Well, you got the Doge.
Yes.
The Doge, and then at the end of that which is right on the canal.
Yes.
And you're talking about the 2 columns there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to. We might have our first domestic on the podcast.
I was just clarifying.
Yes. Well, what I was saying is that's what I thought St Marks Square was, because that's what you see in the pictures, right? You see the 2 big poles with the
columns.
Yes, columns with St Mark and St Theodore on them. But that was the original gate to the square from the canal.
Correct.
Yes, right. But that's not St Marks Square. That's that's part of the outside of the Doge Palace, as you said. So there's sort of 2 plazas in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And along with that plaza I'm talking about, there's more restaurants and cafes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had music there as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's where I had my €17 draft beer.
Yes, which we mentioned
and,
earlier.
the €15 wine. But that's
so
what
it's almost
you pay
like
for.
a big L shape, isn't it? Is what I'm trying to say.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad we sorted that out.
Okay. So do you want to tell me about what's on top of those 2 columns?
No.
Please.
I just thought I did before. One of them has a big winged lion, which represents St Mark.
Yes.
Right. Which is like one of the patron saints of Venice. And the other one has St Theodore, and that is actually a person, and he's got a big sword or a spear, and it's like a crocodile representing a dragon that he's slain, which is St Theodore was the original saint of Venice.
Yeah, he was St Theodore the warrior.
Okay, and that's representing victory over evil.
Correct.
Oh, thank you.
And what else? And what else was that particular area famous for?
That's part of the Doge Palace story, isn't it? It was where they held public executions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My test over.
Yeah. Well, that was very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
You'd almost get an elephant stamp for that.
Right. Elephant stamp. Oh, where did that come from?
I don't know.
So let's move on, shall we? Now,
Yes.
we booked another tour, because everyone says, book your tours before you get here. It's so busy. It's so busy. Do the early tour. So I got online and booked a walking tour with a guide to the Doge Palace and St Marks Basilica, starting at 8 a.m. Yes?
Correct.
So we got up early, walked over there and met our tour guide, Paula, and right at the outside the museum in St Marks Square with a group, quite a big group of people, probably 30 people, I'd say. Divided them into 2, maybe a bit more than that. No, we had 17 in our group because she counted us one by one. Remember?
Yeah. But originally there was another group there.
Yeah. So we were about the only people, maybe a handful of other people in St Marks Square at that time of day. And I thought we were going to St Marks first, but no, we were starting in the Doge Palace. Yeah.
Correct.
So just quickly before we talk about the inside and the tour, what is the Doge Palace?
The Doge Palace is...
It's where the Doge live. Now, the Doge is... waiting for Lyle to, catch up.
No, I'm with you now.
Yeah,
okay, so it's a masterpiece of Gothic architecture. The Doge Palace is an impressive structure composed of layers of building elements and ornamentation from its 14th and 15th century original foundations to the significant Renaissance and opulent Mannerist. Mannerist is a 16th century style of art and design characterized by artificiality, elegance, and
Wow, that sounds
sensuous
right.
distortions of the human figure.
That wasn't exactly what I was meaning.
Okay,
That
so
was lovely.
so look, the Doge.
We've been talking about Doge Palace like everyone knows what it is, and I had no idea before I came to Venice.
Okay, so the Doge Palace. The Doge is like
the leader of Venice.
Yeah, it's sort of like they say the Duke, but it really is not the Duke. So
he's
the
not
Doge,
a king, though.
No, he's not a king. It's not, because it was actually a democracy.
Yes,
it's a democracy. So the Doge was voted in by, I suppose, quite elitist actually.
Yes.
So you had to be an aristocrat to be able to be voted in. And I think there was like 1,600.
But once you're voted in as a Doge, you're a Doge for life.
You're there for good.
So that's the name of the leader of Venice.
Yeah.
And now this leader lived in the Doge
Palace,
right? So we are going into the sensual, whatever you just said, Doge Palace, and we're doing a tour inside. But it was more than just where he lived, which we're going to tell you about. So let's get into the Doge Palace. When was it first built, though? Because it's quite historic, yeah?
Yeah, it was built in 1340.
Yes.
And extended and modified in the following centuries.
Yeah, so basically there was fires and, and they added on, and then something would burn down and they'd build more, or it was built over centuries, really, wasn't it, to how it is today. So it looks quite decorated on the outside, doesn't it? It's, I can't even think of the name of it, but it's almost Muslim looking.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think that
decoration.
Yeah, well, a lot of the decorations in that they had, they pinched from Constantinople. Sure. So that's probably why
But it's not Gothic, is it? What is that? What is the word I'm looking for? Like how it went, like the sort of architecture is like the mosque.
Byzantine.
No, that's not the one I'm looking for. I'll come back to that. Anyway, so the Doge Palace is where the Doge lived, and it was built over centuries and centuries and centuries. So
but not only where he lived, but it also had the administration offices,
sure, that's
the
what
law
I was going to say.
offices.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was. Yeah.
So his part.
It's almost like the town hall as well.
Correct. So, but his part of living it was up the top, and it was the only privacy this guy had, right?
Yeah.
And so each Doge was voted in for life, as we said.
Correct.
And they lived there.
Yes.
And even though they were the leader, the voted leader, they really couldn't make any decisions on their own.
That's correct.
Right. So there were anyway. So we go into the Doge Palace,
and they were voted in by the aristocracy.
Yes.
And I think there was you had to have a certain amount of money and blah blah blah.
Yes.
And so was it a democracy?
Who knows?
I think it's stretching it. But,
all right. But let's tell the people how nice it is, because we've probably gone on and on about the name of this person. So
yeah, I think probably the best way to describe it is that Venice was basically the center of Europe. Like it was economically, financially, everything was going for it. So it could afford to have the best.
Right. And this was a palace, but as you said, it was the heart of where all decisions, everything about Venice was decided here.
Yeah, so if the ambassadors from other countries or merchants from other countries,
and we're going to talk about one of the kings in a minute, actually.
Yeah, they would come to the Doge Palace to do their negotiations.
But what they did was they had all these different rooms, and I think it was depending on what the outcome or what you wanted, depends on which room you went into. So we didn't go into all the rooms, but we went into a lot of them. And one of the first ones we went into was called the room with 4 doors, because it had 4 big doors in it. And that's where people, when they had a meeting with the Doge, it was like the waiting room basically. And he would come down and he would move you on to which next room that you would go into. But just this room alone, the ceilings are covered in artwork, like big are they frescoes? Is that what they're called? Like
No, not necessarily. No, well, the frescoes, I suppose they are,
yeah,
really.
they're just huge paintings. And the bigger the more important the room, I guess, the more elaborate the artwork seems to become, doesn't it?
Look, it is. It takes your breath away. You just look at the walls
and the
and
paintings
the
tell
ceilings.
stories, don't they?
Yeah, and then you've got some rooms that have got battles.
Yeah.
With and one of the particular rooms focused on the sacking of Constantinople, and now you look back on it and you think, well, it was almost like a war crime.
Yes.
But back in the day, it was celebrated.
And then there was like the Senate room, so that's where the Doge would meet with the other, decision makers, and they'd all have to agree, and that was quite. And there's a lot of dark timber in these rooms, so the walls are panelled with decoration. They've got floor to ceiling windows, and when you look up at the ceiling, the decoration. I've got so many photos of these on the website. The decoration is so intricate, yeah.
Yeah.
And the wooden part of them are made by carpenters. And they carve them, these great big frames. They're basically like frames around the artwork, aren't they?
Mm.
And they carve the wood out, and then they cover it bit by bit in gold leaf.
Yeah.
So there's you look at the ceilings are amazing, and on the walls they've got like some of them have got these massive clocks, and they're 20 clocks, and they've got 24-hour clocks.
Sure.
And they only have one hand that points to the hour. They don't have a second hand.
Yeah, and the 1 to 24 are all in Roman numerals.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's a
zodiac clock.
Yeah, the astrological clock. That's it. So, and then in each room too, they have somewhere obviously where the Doge sits. So that's like a platform. So depending on what whether it's a visiting ambassador or that the room that they go into is much bigger, and it's got like the room of 10, and just room after room. And I think I'm glad we had a guide, because she gave us so much information, and you would never have known where to go.
I think you probably could get an audio guide, but it'd take a lot longer.
Yes.
I thought if you were going to do it,
it was great.
You definitely do a guided tour. But then there was one of the rooms I remember, and it had all the paintings of all the Doges.
Yeah, Doges.
Doges. Yeah, it's hard to say. Doge.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So they painted themselves kneeling.
Yes.
Because they like to appear humble.
Yeah.
And because they're there for the people. You're right.
Mm.
And they all put their coat of arms of their family on the painting as well.
Yeah.
So all the Doges have a great big picture. But one of the pictures, let's talk about this. This is fascinating. One of the pictures had Henry the Third.
Yeah, the French king.
Right, and he came for a visit for a week, and so they partnered him up with the famous courtesan of the day, and to be one of the the famous courtesans, you had to have a few things. You had to have blonde hair. We can talk about that in a moment. This is Italian people having blonde hair. You had to be quite intelligent.
Mm.
You had to be quite voluptuous as well.
Yeah.
And
you maybe had to be able to play a musical instrument.
Right, yeah. So they they paired him up with this beautiful courtesan who's actually in that painting.
Yes, at the back.
And he liked it so much here that he stayed for a whole lot longer than a week. I think it was a month, but yeah. But it was interesting. We found out then that the women of Venice saw blonde, wavy, curly hair. It had to be too. Couldn't be straight. So they saw blonde hair as a sign of beauty.
Correct.
Right?
So nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. However, when you look at most Venetian women, they're dark hair.
Correct.
Right? So back in, the day, we're talking centuries and centuries ago.
1300s, yeah.
They
1400s.
had to find a way to make their hair blonde.
Yes.
Right.
And actually, we at this particular hotel where we're staying at the Palace, we went upstairs and there's a wooden structure up there.
Yeah, a rooftop area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the palaces have these rooftop areas on them. However, I don't imagine the courtesans had access to those. So anyway.
Yeah, but if blonde hair was the sign of beauty, obviously all the ladies in
correct, all the
wives of the
palace owners,
aristocrats would have wanted blonde hair as well.
And so to get blonde hair, you don't just go to the hairdresser. You get people, slaves, people are maids.
So you don't go to Bondi Lane.
No, you don't go to Bondi Lane hairdresser. You get a special mixture of herbs and spices, and there was something else I mentioned.
There was a main ingredient.
I'm coming to that. You want to spoil all my stories. The main thing that you need to dye your hair blonde is ammonia. And they got their ammonia. Get this. This is the aristocratic women of the day changing their hair from black to blonde, lying up in the sun. Oh, they had to have white skin as well. So they had to lie up in the sun, cover their skin up so it wouldn't get darker. And they put this, remedy on their hair, which included herbs and spices, the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and horse urine. A paste of that, and they painted
that combined with the sunlight,
yes,
turned their hair blonde.
Well, I don't think it was instant, so I don't know how many times the horse had to pee on their hair, but
from what I can gather, horses pee pretty well.
Really, that's bizarre. But all these paintings of the women of the day and how beautiful they are, and the women representing Venice all have blonde, wavy hair, and you can see these wooden structures on the rooftops of the palaces where the ladies change their hair to blonde. So you're right, nothing's changed. Doge Palace had, as we said, quite a few different facilities that it was used for. So the leader lived there, and he entertained guests, etc. What we didn't talk about was the biggest room in the Doge Palace. Actually, it's one of the biggest rooms, in any building in Italy, and it's called the Chamber of the Great Council, and it's huge. And you walk in there, and you just can't. I think it's like 53 meters long and 20 something meters wide. It's just massive, and that's where they've got that painting of the overtaking of Constantinople. And there's, one end, you can't even see some person from one end to the other, but this room was for all sorts of reasons where everybody would meet, if you had more than the other rooms would fit. But one of the main functions was the wives of the Doges would put on what they call
banquets.
Banquets. But these banquets just wouldn't go for, like one night. They'd go for days and days and days, wouldn't they? So, so as I said, it's called the Chamber of the Great Council, and it is the ceiling in that. I've got a photo sort of standing at one end, and you can see there's sort of statues at one end, and then the ceiling of that is so impressive. And then I've got a photo the other way of that, the pleasure one. Like it's all about people going to heaven. It was just
Yeah, and I think the artist that did most of that was Bellini.
Oh, it's fascinating.
And it really was, and everything. When we were told during the tour, all the paintings were symbolic.
Yes,
and
so that story symbolic.
And so that when people would come to these banquets or for government meetings, these paintings on the side of the walls of
showing how powerful Venice was.
That was to intimidate everybody. So very interesting.
As we said, so it was all these. So the Doge's sort of living quarters on one level, and then you've got all these rooms for all the different functions of running the country or the city of Venice on this other level. But there were some other things here, or there are some other things at the Doge Palace. Now, they had a secret room for the secret police, and we're going to talk about them in a minute. But it was also the jail. So it's where people were jailed. And there were two jail areas, and one was down below, and it was called the Well, because the cells were often had water on the floor, and it was rats everywhere. Apparently, it was just like being in hell. And once you went down there, you didn't want to go down there. Basically, that was pretty awful. And then they had another jail, which was actually above the living quarters in the, what did they call, the cavity of the ceiling. And so the ceiling, or the roof, outside the roof, was made of lead. So that jail up top was called the Leads, or the Lead. Yeah, so that's where they put some prisoners as well. So you'd probably rather go up there. Yes?
Mm.
Yes. He's looking at me like,
no,
you're listening. And so the secret police had 70 mailboxes around the city of Venice. And each of those mailboxes had like a face of a lion with the mouth, and you put you put letters in the mailbox for the secret police.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that the Venetians were aristocrats were very, very paranoid about spies.
Yes.
So, and that because of their economic and financial power, that's what their main concern was.
Being a traitor was worse than being a murderer. That was. So what you could do if you suspected somebody of committing a crime or being a spy, same, you would put, hello, my name's Lyle McCabe from Beach Travel Wine. I suspect that my wife Leanne is a spy, and traitor, and put it in the mouth of the lion.
Yeah.
Right. The next day or whenever, someone from the secret police would go around all of Venice and collect any of the letters from the secret mailboxes and collect them and take them back to the secret squirrel business at the Doge Palace, where the secret police had their secret headquarters, and they would then go through them.
Now, they'd adjudicate which ones were possibly
worth more. So they'd be like, yep, that one's worth investigating. No, throw that one in the bin, right? Now, if they get one out that says, oh, this looks interesting, this is from Lyle McCabe, he says, oh, Mrs. McCabe has, done
the dirty.
Yep. That needs investigating more. So they take that and they investigate more. And they find out that, no, Leanne McCabe hasn't been a spy. So she's free to go. But Lyle McCabe, who's made a false accusation, he now is going to jail. And so he gets taken down to the wells. So good system, right?
I reckon it's clever.
You're not going to dob someone in just because you don't like them, because you risk a fate worse than death anyway, right?
Yeah, sure. I just think it's really
So I think
clever.
people were terrified of them.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing one of the rooms we went into, I can't remember the name of it, but it's where 3 of the secret police, now they were elected into these positions, head positions, and they only held them for 3 months. And then another 3 were elected, and they were the ones that made all the decisions about, so if you're going into that room to sit in front of these steely-eyed, secret police, you're pretty well in the shit, right? I don't think many of them walk free. And what would happen is, yes, you're guilty, you need to go to the lead, or you need to go to the well. And they had these secret doors. And secret tunnels and secret staircases, and you would either go up or you would go down, never to see the light of day again.
So you go from the Doge Palace to what they called, and you go across the Bridge of Sigh.
Yes. Well, there's that as well, right?
Yeah, to the prison.
Yeah. But you can do a tour of those secret stairs and tunnels of the Doge Palace. We were told that you don't want to be frightened of the dark or small spaces to do that, but
it's quite claustrophobic.
Or be scared easily, because it's quite intense.
But, they're quite thin.
Yeah, and you wouldn't see the doors unless they were pointed out.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have a clue.
So they're sitting in the panelling behind. So that was fascinating. But that's right. What Lyle was saying is, then there's also the prisoners that were sent to other cells, which were across the canal, and you go over the
Bridge of Sighs.
Yeah, so
that was named by Byron.
Right. And so it was basically they're like, oh, it's their last glimpse of the outside world before they hit the prison, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah. So the bridge of size, I've got some nice photos of the outside of that, but also walking across it, some photos of that. That was pretty cool. So that whole Doge Palace is fascinating, isn't it? From the rooms where they entertain, hundreds of people, to the secret police, the tunnels and the bridge of size and all the artwork and the timber work and
Then we went to the armory.
Oh, so we did too. Yeah, we actually did go through the armory. So they had all of that on display. They had armor, like full armor and all the swords and the hats, like the helmets, and yeah, that was pretty impressive, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Yes, there's so much to see. The Doge Palace. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Because that was pretty damn impressive, I think.
Yeah. Look.
Oh, there's a huge staircase as you enter too, the main entrance, it's this really imposing staircase. So you wouldn't want to go there just for a casual visit. And there's statues at the top of that. And there's a big courtyard in the middle. And as we said, they did the public executions outside. They beheaded people out there. It was just, it would have been, pretty full on in its day.
But as we've said before, everything is very, very symbolic. So when they built the staircase, the main staircase, and they had the huge statues, it's just magnificent because that's the entrance to the Doge Palace. So it had to be so impressive to people that were arriving that it blew their mind.
Sure.
So, and that's really the whole tradition behind the palace. Well, tradition is probably not the right word, but the whole
idea
feel of the palace was to intimidate people.
So I would definitely recommend doing the early tour like we did.
It was fabulous.
We were the only people in the Doge Palace that whole time. So we got to wander around and just take photos and really enjoy the space on our own. But after the Doge Palace, we were off to St Marks Basilica. St Marks Cathedral is well known in Venice. That's what everyone likes. St Marks Square, St Marks Cathedral. It's quite an unusual looking cathedral. I think, the outside is very decorated. It's got, as I mentioned in our earlier podcast, the mosaics on the outside, and there's a lot of dome work inside as well. So when you go inside the church, basilica, actually before you go inside, we've already mentioned the 4 horses. Now there's 4 bronze horses. Now there's 4 horses right on top of the basilica, and you'll see those in the pictures on our website at beachtravelwine.com. They're not the originals. We're going to tell you about them in a minute. So, but that's one of the most sort of things that you notice about about the cathedral. And also there's basically millions and millions of pieces of glass made into the mosaics all over the church. And as you walk in, it's quite dark. But when was it built?
Oh, look, I reckon we should talk about St Mark and who St Mark was to start with. So although he was not a direct disciple of Jesus, St Mark is the author of one of the 4 Gospels and played a vital role in spreading the gospel as a missionary in the early church. St Marks Basilica in Venice was founded in the 9th century to house the corpse of St Mark after, now listen to this, wily Venetian merchants smuggled it out of Alexandria, Egypt in a barrel of pork fat.
So basically they brought his bones back. He died in Egypt and they went and got them. And so he's buried at the basilica, so it's believed.
Right? So the deal is that because it was a Muslim country, as in Turkey, Turkey now, which is Constantinople,
Egypt, where they were.
It was a Muslim country, so they thought that it was clever to put them in pork fat.
That's
because
right. They don't touch pork. Actually, there's a mosaic on the big archway as you go in that depicts that.
Correct. And
there's a guy holding his nose, looking over the barrel of pork fat. So but as you walk into the basilica, the first thing that strikes you is it's quite dark. Yeah, because it's like there's so much of the mosaics that are quite dark, because they date back. How far do they go back?
San Marco Basilica was built in 1829 to 1836, rebuilt again in 1063 to 1094. The architecture is basically Byzantine, Romanesque, and Gothic. Now,
that's probably why
it is
dark,
a bit
right?
of like the outside. You look at it, and it's nothing like the Catholic churches that you see in Spain.
No,
nothing like them at all.
They're a bit hodgepodge, isn't it?
And it really is, and because you've got the domes, that sort of gives you that, because it was basically. As far as I know, was based on the church.
Yeah, it was modelled on a church from Turkey, wasn't it? I think.
It was. I can't see it now, but it basically was copied off this particular church in Constantinople. So that's probably why you see the domes there. But it's, would you call it eclectic?
Eclectic, maybe.
Eclectic.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, it's when you walk in, it's quite dark, and I wonder if that's because of the way it was built too.
Yeah. Okay. It was modelled on the Church of the Holy Apostles in Constantinople to convey the Republic's wealth and power, embellished over time with precious stones and rare marbles, primarily in the 13th century. Many of the columns, reliefs, and sculptures were spoils stripped from churches, palaces, and public monuments of Constantinople. The interior of the domes, the vaults, and the upper walls were slowly covered with gold ground mosaics depicting saints, prophets, and biblical scenes. But you are right when you said it is very dark.
Yeah, you walk in and there's these, like, it's like your standard set, like, layout of the church. You've got your chairs in the middle, and you've got your pulpit, and the chambers off to the side, and you've got these massive big columns, as you said. There's marble on the walls, and up high there's just mosaics everywhere depicting saints and all that sort of stuff, as you said. And like there's no windows to let light in, but once you get used to the darkness, it's quite beautiful. Like, it's really it's very unusual, as you said. Like, it's not like a lot of the other cathedrals we've been into. One of the things that you can see is about 90 centimetres up the wall. You can see where the water damage was from
the flood.
Yeah, in November 2019. So they're doing all this reconstruction work as well. And because of that, but also like there's just ongoing work because it's such an old cathedral. But they've got sort of flooring now that's protecting the tiles and things as well. So you walk through there, and there's like a big sort of stand where the Doge goes, because he went to mass every day.
Yeah, pulpit.
Yeah, pulpit. Yeah. Well, then there's the other pulpit where obviously the priest was as well.
Correct.
So, so every day these guys went to mass. So besides being in the Doge Palace, which is right next door to the Doge Palace, we should add. So that's where he lived. Besides doing all the stuff he had to do with running the city, he had to go to mass every day as well. So
well, there is a corridor built, which we didn't see, but there is a corridor from the Doge Palace to the Basilica.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
for sure. So when we were there, there's quite a lot of people, but we were able to walk past and get some nice photographs and just check out a lot of the decorations on the church, and you could see where St Mark is. His crypt thing?
Crypt,
there. And then we went up to the top level, I guess, up a very steep staircase.
Yeah.
And luckily it had a good railing I was able to hang on to. I'm not keen of going up steep staircases. And you get to the top, and you can actually look back down over the cathedral, and you're sort of up at the level of all those mosaics. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And, you can touch them if you want to. I wasn't quite game, but they're, and they show you, there's sort of like a bit of a museum area where they show you how they actually made them. And they've got lots of people working on these, and there's little bits of glass, some of them the size of your fingernail, and some of them, like tiny little bits, like, so the finer sort of around their eyes are these tiny, they're all just little bits of glass that they put plaster down, and they have someone draw the diagram, and then they have, you know, the artist do that, and like it's a whole process to get all those mosaics done, and they've got them all over the top of the walls and over the domes. It's outstanding, isn't it?
And a lot of the mosaics are huge.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, and how they even get up there to do it? Like that couldn't get my head around that, because you'd have to do it in place.
No, I don't think. I think she actually said that they do it and then they put it, like they get it, and then they put it up somehow.
But they're sort of curved, some of them, so that would be.
I'm not sure, but it's impressive.
It is impressive.
But the other thing about, because as Lan said, you look down at the main floor, and that's huge, because you've got to imagine, like, you've got 1,600 aristocrats just over in the Doge Palace. So then put in the rest of the population. So you imagine the size of the downstairs, and then you go upstairs.
And they just still do mass there every day.
Correct. Yeah, they still do that. And when we were there was
a service going on.
A service going on. But down the bottom were all the males.
Mm.
And up the top were the females.
Yeah, which is a better view anyway.
Yeah, I don't think the guys got it right there. But
so when you walk around the top, as we're saying, like there's a bit of a museum, like, or a information place where they show you how they made the mosaics. And then as you go around that part, you come across the 4 horses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the 4 bronze horses that the Venetians stole from
Constantinople.
Now,
they also say that those horses originally came from ancient Rome or Greece.
Yeah,
so
they
basically the Constantinopolians.
Everyone kept taking them.
Yeah, So they stole them probably from there.
Yep.
And then they went to Venice, and then Napoleon came along in 1797, I think it was, and he took them to Paris, and they were on top of the Arc de Triomphe because Napoleon thought they looked good. And then eventually I'm not sure how the Venetians got them back, but they got them back inside.
Yep.
Now, the original ones are inside the basilica.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. When you walk around the corner and you see these, they're probably 2 times the size of a normal horse. Like they're well, maybe not quite that much, but they're huge, and there's 4 of them.
Mm.
And they are so old. And one of the things about them is they're so realistic.
Yes, but they're beautiful.
And you can actually see the veins in some of their necks and stuff. They are stunning. But they were so big, they didn't realise when they went to get them and bring them back from France, and they get over there to bring them back, and they don't fit into whatever they
were bringing them back from.
And what did they do?
They cut their heads off.
They chopped their heads off. And so that's now why, when you see the pictures of them on our website, beachtravelwine.com, go and check it out. They've got collars around their neck now.
Yeah. To hide what they did. Yeah.
But you can actually then, just around the corner from the real horses, you can hop out onto the roof, I guess it is, of the basilica, where the horses are outside on display. And you can go out there and see those ones, but you can, get the view over St Marks Plaza and
the Grand Canal.
The Grand Canal, I was a bit freaked out. It was a bit unsafe for my liking, but everyone goes out there. It was pretty.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think if it had been a nice day, you'd spend a bit more time out there. But I got a couple of good photos myself, because Lam wasn't that keen, and I said to Lam, "Do you want me to get some photos?" And she looked at me with, scare. She was a bit scared of what I'd do. But I got one particular photo,
and I'll tell
looking
you what,
across the horses out to the canal, which is a good one. There was also, and I don't know what the name of the building was, but it's a bell tower.
Yes.
And it was on the right-hand side, and I think I got a pretty good pic of that. And
that bell tower you're talking about, it's got 2 figurines up there, and one's got a hammer. And it beats the time, like it's 8 o'clock, it does it 8 times, and that's been going.
The figurine, but basically hits the bell.
But they've been doing that non-stop for centuries. That particular thing.
Look, it's a really impressive building.
It really.
And that had the 24-hour Latin numeral clock as well.
So we definitely think the St Marks Basilica is worth the visit and doing the guided tour. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the guided tour was 230 odd euro, which is about $400, I think, Australian. But you look,
Another 3 hours well spent, though.
Yeah, and make sure you get the early one, though.
Yeah, very early. So Lyle's very excited to tell us all about one of his heroes.
Well, well, I'm going to talk about two of
Venice's-
Venice's favourite sons.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's get this.
So the first one is Casanova.
Right, everyone's heard of Casanova, right?
He was born in 1725 and died in 1798, aged 73. The most prominent prisoner who made the pass
over the bridge of Sighs.
He to the new prison from the Doge's palace is Casanova. He was imprisoned in the year 1755 for expanding an anti-religious.
He was anti-religious. While you're sorting that out, I'm just going to say people know Casanova as being like, you're a Casanova. He was like a player, right?
Sure, he was a womanizer.
Yeah, right. But he was obviously doing the wrong thing, and he ended up in jail in the Doge's palace. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was. Yeah, it was. They say it was an anti-religious opinion, and but basically what they did is they claimed him as a spy.
Right. Okay.
But
he went up to the lead jail, didn't he?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was there for 15 months, and he must have thought, I'm too young for this. I need to get out. Old Casanova. So what Casanova did is somehow he made a hole in the lead roof and he got out, and somehow he climbed down the outside. So the lead roof's up in the cavity of the, this multi-story palace. Somehow he's climbed down the outside or walked across the rooftop somehow, got down to the bottom, and miraculously there was a gate left open that he was able to go out. And at the same time, miraculously, there was a gondola in the middle of the night just waiting
to take him away.
And off he went and spent 20 years traveling around Europe.
Yeah, look, he was obviously he was a real character, but he has written his memoirs in French. And he wrote them in French because he preferred the French language to his own. But as a classic here, despite, this is in his memoirs, despite an excellent moral foundation, the inevitable of divine principles, which were...
it's great quote, this one.
Sorry. In my heart...
Yes.
I was all my life the victim of my senses. I have delighted in going astray, and I have constantly lived in error, with no other constellation that of knowing I have erred. So, in other words, he didn't care.
No. Okay. That was a great quote. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, sorry, but I had anyway.
He wrote it down because you fancied that, because he's like, I have done all this shit. And I don't give a damn.
Yeah, I've got no regrets. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah, fair enough. So that's Casanova. He was quite tall. I don't know why I knew that, but apparently he was.
Well, the lady in the...
Paula told us that. All right, so tell us about the other one, the Marco Polo.
Marco Polo.
Who was it, Marco?
Marco Polo. Leanne, stop it. 1754 to 1324. He was 70.
17 to 13.
No, 1254 to 1324.
Okay, you said 17.
Well, he was 70.
Yeah. I see.
He's buried at the San Lorenzo in Venice. Marco Polo is arguably the most famous Western traveller to have journeyed on the Silk Road. As a young merchant, he began his journey to China in 1271, and his travels lasted for 24 years. During this time, he became the confidant of Kublai Khan. Initially, the journey was to spread Christianity to the ruling classes of China and to establish trade relations with the new Yang dynasty.
So why was he famous in Venice? I don't know. Was he born here?
He was born here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
He was born here. Sorry. And he made great maps of Asia. Now,
yes,
I think the influence that Marco Polo had was he basically discovered the Silk Road.
Right.
So remembering Venice was one of the most important ports
and trading centres.
in the world at that time. I think the fact that Marco Polo, he's established it with the East.
Okay, very good. Okay, so that's Casanova and Marco Polo. Yes.
Marco?
Polo. Yeah. Oh, man. All right, and to finish off, Lyle, just quickly, another thing that Venice is well known for is Carnivale.
Oh, yes.
You know, and when you're walking around the streets of Venice, there are lots of things for sale, but one of the things you see a lot of are the masks, you know, and originally the men wore plain masks and the women had fancy ones. And that was because they partied so hard and did really bad things that they didn't want to be recognised.
Well, part of the thing was that initially, I suppose the peasants or the underclass were not allowed to wear colourful clothing.
Right.
So for 3 months of the year, the Doge has made a decree that in this 3 months of the year, as long as you wear a mask and no one can identify you, you can wear whatever you like.
So there's masks for sale everywhere. Fancy,
sure.
Feathers, like big headpieces, the ones with the great big long noses, like they're just everywhere. It was and it goes back centuries. Yeah.
And each of those style of masks,
yes,
there's a tradition behind that style of mask.
They're beautiful,
some of them are so intricate. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Some of them are scary as hell.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when that happens once a year now, still they do Carnivale.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same 3 months.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. There must be like a major week or something that they do some celebrations. So, all right, Lyle, this is Venice. I wasn't sure whether I'd love it, but I couldn't get the smile off my face when we came in from the airport and made it to our beautiful accommodation and over the canals and walking over the streets and the bridges and looking at the little restaurants on the sides of the canals, and it's just everything magical that I thought Venice would be. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that we've heard is you get lost in Venice.
Yeah.
Well, you sort of do.
Yeah, we went wandering one day, and I said, "Oh, that's we've got to head back this way. We'll just wander and see where we go." And next thing you know, we've done this big horseshoe shape, and we basically ended up where we started. But it didn't matter.
It's funny. Everywhere we've been in Europe, they are so parochial. Whether it be in Spain or England or all these places. Or in Paris, they're so parochial, but I don't think there's anywhere else in the world more, or so far that we visited, more parochial than the Venetians.
And they have every right to be. Yes?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Arrivederci from me in Venezia.
Yeah, ciao, baby.